it's 6 o'clock, so we'll call this thing to order on time. Today is Thursday, March 20th, 2025. And this is the March meeting of the Birch Bay Incorporation Steering Committee. Everybody hear us online just fine? We've got 4 participants. Got to get a thumbs up or a yes or something. While we do that, I'd like to start. Yep. Thank you, Sandy. I'd like to start by just reiterating our statement of purpose, keep this on track. So this was adopted by a meeting of about 100 and some community members on November 15th, 2023. The purpose of BBIA is to explore and, if found feasible, advocate for incorporation to give residents of Birch Bay more direct control over the future of their community. BBIA will accomplish this by 1, creating an inclusive, nonpartisan process to explore the creation through incorporation of the future city of Birch Bay, including but not limited to exploring the proposed and proposing city boundaries, form of government classification of city. 2, promoting a feasibility study and community engagement, soliciting feedback and information sharing regarding the possibility of incorporating Birch Bay into the city. And 3, serving as a liaison with the county, state, and boundary review board, and should a feasibility study and since the Birch Bay residents be positive, to advocate for and advance the incorporation process through a citizen initiative. BBIA will not plan for, discern, or take positions on matters of future city policy, including land use, health and safety regulations, and taxes. And with that, I think we can move into the roll call. Chair Matt Berry here, Vice Chair Lisa Guthrie
Here.
Treasurer and Finance Committee Chair Sharman Burnham
Here.
Secretary Michael Stringham here. Research and Feasibility Committee Chair Jonathan Mallahan here. Jason Pulverari here. Patrick Allesey.
Yeah.
He's coming. Yorks and Jean right here. Caprice Pine
Here.
Michael Rutkowski here. Jan Barnes
Here.
Lisa Black. Maybe online. We'll see. Take it.
I think Lisa said she was zooming.
Not yet.
No, okay.
Pauline Neffsey. Holly Hamilton.
Here.
And Raymond Slatney. Not here. We do have a quorum, so we can move forward. Just a reminder, the meeting is recorded. Please speak up. This is our 1 microphone over here. When there's public comment time like that, just make sure you speak up so the folks can hear us online. And then this will be posted on the website here soon after the meeting. Approval of minutes. February quarterly community meeting minutes were posted to the public group and shared online and via email. Did everybody get a chance to see them?
Lisa will move with
You
the
made
two corrections.
two corrections.
Yeah, with the 2 corrections, which was just typos basically, right?
Yep.
And so, yeah, I will move with those 2 corrections. Second.
Any discussions?
Sorry, it was.
Caprice. Second.
Caprice seconded.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the minutes with those corrections?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you very much. So we'll do a couple of committee reports here, and then we'll go into an open session public comment period. Folks from the our guests want to raise their hand, ask questions throughout. We'll try to fit in as many as we can, and then if we have any time at the end, we can kind of talk about whatever else we have to discuss. So I'll quickly just give a little recap of our last meeting on February 20th. It was our quarterly association meeting, and we were joined by Whatcom County Sheriff Don L. Tanksley and about 60 some community members online and watching remotely. I thought it was a great meeting. A lot of good info. I was really proud of the research and feasibility group put together information that was then verified by the Sheriff's Department. Key takeaways. The 2008 Birch Bay Incorporation feasibility study suggested Birch Bay would need to contract with Whatcom County Sheriff's Office to maintain a similar level of coverage. Minimum force would require at least 1 lieutenant, 1 sergeant, 1 ID technician, and 5 deputies at an estimated cost of about $1.2 million annually. A more realistic force of 10 to 11 deputies aligns with the Research and Feasibility Committee's findings. Birch Bay could allocate approximately $2.16 million to public safety without tax increases for that. For comparison, the city of Blaine, which has about 2/3 the population that Birch Bay has, currently has 15 officers. Tanksley, Sheriff Tanksley said that Whatcom County Sheriff's Office would be open to discussions if Birch Bay were to incorporate. Our format for our meetings that we established back in 2023 was we would have a couple of steering committee meetings where we kind of plan and do research and prepare for a quarterly association meeting where we have a special guest and we talk about things like we had kind of executive staff also do at one and some state representatives and Sheriff Tanksley. We hope to host Birch Bay Water and Sewer again. And then the next one, which will be May 15th, 6 o'clock here upstairs. We confirmed former city managers Bob Jean from, I think he managed Newcastle and University Place immediately after incorporation. So he has experience with newly incorporated cities. And Dave Wilbrick, the former city manager of Blaine, who now lives in Birch Bay, will be our guests. So that'll be a great one, and look forward to seeing all what the committees put together to kind of present at that and come up with some good questions. And we'll poll the community for questions too and have kind of a nice roundtable discussion. I do have an update on the 2025 feasibility study. So planning and I should back up. County Council last summer voted after we advocated to fund an update to the 2008 feasibility study. That was approved. Planning and Development Services didn't get the contract done in 2024, so it's going to go up for a vote again on Tuesday, but projected to pass. For Community Attributes Incorporated is the acronym, right, Jonathan? To do a new feasibility study with new data. I did bring the staff memo. You've all got it here, and I have 2 extras here. If anybody wants these, you can take a look. But that is all the information that's posted publicly on the county website for the meeting next Tuesday. It's quite impressive. They're going to take a couple of different approaches to analyzing the financial viability of a potential city. And it looks like they'll do lots of community outreach surveys, reaching out to us, information to kind of, or chance to share information. So it should be good. Any questions about any of this? Okay.
Is it still looking at getting it back in August since there's gonna be reapproving it?
So on the second page, backside of the first page, there is the contract. At the bottom, it says contract expiration date September 30th. We think that might get delayed a little bit, or there's a potential for it, but what I've been told from Planning and Development Services is that it'll be late fall.
We should just note in the contract, there's no penalty for not completing by that date, and it can be extended by mutually, mutual written consent, which is totally normal in these agreements, but like, that will I would be surprised if that doesn't happen.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that? I suggest everybody give it a good read. It's going to be interesting. I think it'll be a good study.
And feel free to either go to the meeting or go online and make comments at the council meeting and or send an email ahead of time. I sent my email already and I'm planning to make comments at the meeting.
Same here. I did want to show you, so I have a video of a meeting that happened, or segment of a meeting that happened on February 20th, earlier in the day than our quarterly association meeting. It was a meeting of city and county elected officials talking about the growth or growth allocations, employment growth allocations as part of the comprehensive plan update. And they had an agenda item on their agenda that was something like discussion of the potential for a newly incorporated city in Whatcom County. We weren't invited. Birch Bay Community Advisory Committee wasn't invited, but they did have some interesting discussion. I just wanted you to see this so you could kind of hear what was said about us earlier in the day.
I hope you have the volume turned up.
I'll turn it up.
Matt, do you want to preface it about Satpal's interest in Custer, or?
I think just
I feel
play
like
it.
that's okay.
I did put some notes on the video as to where the people are from who are speaking, but I didn't want to blow up people's spots or, so I left off their names. So, it's not, it's just referring to where they're coming from. We're not trying to, I don't know if the word's criticize what they're talking about, but it is. We should, as a community, steering committee that's looking into this, kind of know what they're saying about in semi-private meetings.
Eye opening.
So we got a really great place to end. I want to make sure we've got a little less than a half hour, which I think is fine. It's like this last one may not be quite as meaty. It's been brought up several times, the idea of a newly incorporated city. There is an example of Birch Bay. I just wanted to bring that up to see whether there was further discussion on that, because that is really a big comp plan.
City of Laurel and City of Custer, is that kind of?
City of Laurel, City of Custer. What, you start then, go ahead.
I guess in terms of the city, in my, Linden is surrounded by great ag land. Birch Bay is not.
Nice.
We'd be a whole lot better off putting a lot more people in the Birch Bay area than around Linden. Even though maybe that's not good for me in the long haul, but it's probably good for our community to locate people on less productive land as opposed to highly productive ag land.
So the Birch Bay study, I think, was positive, and it was really a financial study. It said, is there enough tax base? If this thing incorporated, could it actually pay for itself? That was a study back in, I don't know, 2008. Yeah, so I don't know. That's all.
Yeah, so thing is, why, we shouldn't be obsessed with it has to be city. Like, there is no condition that has to be, it could be just, we can have 3 Birch Bays. What's wrong with that?
It looks.
No, we can, the thing is, no, let me complete my statement. Over the last 20 years, we have learned so much. What did we do wrong with the Birch Bay? What do we do wrong with the Columbia Valley? Right?
No, I
So,
don't.
no, I know, because we are a county,
Yeah.
we know,
Okay.
okay? What I'm saying is, after learning from that, why can't we develop a plan that next UGA, we will do a rural UGA, it will have the stormwater, traffic, and other things, because they were able to do that because they themselves decided to be a water and sewer district. That was the biggest thing, otherwise they would not have grown that much. Why don't we start with that? That you have to have a sewer, we will put 20,000 people, just picking a number. I know, I think they things in visionary. I think the council is looking at, to me, give a specific plan with item number 1, item number 2. I'm not to that point yet. I'm to the point to sell my vision. That's why I talk like stories, because I want people to buy into that. So Birch Bay, if we take Custer, we say we imagine that it will be a 20,000 people city in 25 years, whatever number we do. Then we put the things that we just discussed in our first question. The storm will be like this, sewer will be like this, and roads will be like this, standard and all this. It doesn't have to be. I mean, it is my interest that it should not be a city because we get all the tax revenue. But that's not the point. But I'm trying to say is that making a city is so cumbersome in our laws. I don't think we will ever get there. But we can get there by making there's a law that Lammert can be designated by the county council. Lammert can be designated as UGA. Just one resolution.
I thought Lammert's had to be in existence as of 1990.
No, they are in existence, but they are the existing, Custer is the existing Lammert. So what I'm saying is, we can take that.
Lammert is a limited area of more intensive rural development. It's kind of like a junior UGA.
Custer and call it UGA and expand its boundary and say, okay, we'll have, so there will be private people. Put that proposal to somebody. We can't say that somebody has to come to me and say, I have $50 million, where should I spend it? It's not that, it's the other way around. That we pitch for that we want to create 3 new Birch Bays in our county. Who's willing to pick up their hand and say, yes, we are willing to bring money in for that?
John?
Thanks, Michael. I do know, we actually do have some folks who are involved in Birch Bay Incorporation here. They are participants, but Matt Berry is on the Birch Bay Incorporation Association. And I see Danielle from the chamber. And I see other folks here who we recently appointed to. The county created after community, demand and community request, we created a Birch Bay Community Advisory Committee, that's just getting started up. So for folks who want to follow those conversations, check out the Birch Bay Incorporation Association. The county put funds in to update that study that you mentioned, Michael, that one that's now, you know, what, 15 years old. So that is going on right now. So for folks who want to check that out. And if we want, we could invite folks from the Incorporation Association to come present at one of our upcoming meetings.
What is that?
The
What a
other
concept.
places where I've heard interest in incorporation, obviously it's not, you know, majority, you never know majority until you put it to a vote. But there is interest in Columbia Valley. I have heard interest in Columbia Valley in that UGA and in Point Roberts. So there are other areas to consider across the county as well. And obviously you need to study this to make sure that it's feasible, that there's tax base there. And I should also say, it's the people in those areas who have to make those decisions and have to drive that demand. I have not heard that demand from Custer.
No,
I don't know if anybody else does.
and they won't.
The discussion about
Nor will
the
put it
new
in.
city of Custer or Freedom of Birch Bay is, I think, detracts from one of the planning goals that some of us share. That is, we're trying to minimize growth in rural areas, put growth where we have the potential for infrastructure. Those are existing cities. The idea of creating more distant places that don't have infrastructures just to kind of fragmented sprawl to me. I'd love to see Blaine be able to get more capacity. We've done zoning bonuses, density bonuses for Birch Bay, and it's not really happening. People aren't taking advantage of it. So I mean, maybe they will at some point, but I think the focus of this planning cycle should be how do we concentrate growth and plan for growth adjacent to existing cities and existing UGAs. I think it detracts from that goal to say we'll start building new cities where there's no infrastructure.
So Birch Bay is off to a good start, and I'm very comforted hearing Scott's actually say out loud, yeah, perhaps it would be better for the ag in this county to start sending something to somewhere other than Linden, because the thing that I was told so often 10 or 15 years ago is that the more ag land that winds up being developed into condos, that eventually you get to a point where the support services for ag don't have enough customers, and the whole thing implodes, and we don't have an ag industry anymore. So I think it would be great if the county, where the county's figuring out where to put the projections and where to try and push new population, a place like Birch Bay that's on its way to being a city would seem like a good place to target that.
So
Can you clarify what they said we're not taking advantage of?
There are density bonuses potentially for developers on pieces of property
Okay,
or ways to mitigate. I don't know the specifics on these now, because it's been, a number of years since I was involved in development of property here in Birch Bay. But last year, they increased the density in some of the areas here in Birch Bay. For example, they upzoned the properties because we weren't meeting the goal.
Mhm.
Because what's getting built are single-family residences on big lots.
Mhm.
And what needs to get built in order to meet these growth objectives, yeah, I was like, what's the right word? Objectives, is multifamily, and more dense. And so far, no developer has jumped on being the one to build that. And then that's if you build it, will they come, or, what's the demand for it? So.
and they're not taking advantage of it because developers know that it's there though, correct? Is that what?
When the developers, when they know what the zoning is, and they'll find out in their feasibility studies for the properties, what they can do with it, but they are also looking at what's the market.
John, the economics of multifamily dense development in Birch Bay right now are terrible.
Right.
And that's not just true of Birch Bay, that's true of many communities in Washington, and high interest rates, high land costs, softening demand in multifamily markets. You have a multifamily rate for a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment. The 60% AMI rate of affordable set aside is the same as market rate. So you're not going to see, that doesn't support debt. So you're not going to see, I think, massive multifamily housing development in Birch Bay until some of those fundamentals change.
Are there problems with condominiums here too, in terms of?
There's problems with
Lots of things.
condominiums across the state, like
Right.
that's a state issue.
Right, okay, that's also going to slow the.
Right.
Reminder to just please speak up so the
Oh.
folks can.
Yeah.
Pat,
Said Paul said it. And he said, basically, we screwed up at Birch Bay for the last few years. Let's go over and look at Custer for a city. I've been saying, yes, they've screwed up for the last several years. And it cost us more. Every screw up costs us more in the future. And we have to pay for it.
Mhm.
And that's, that's where I come from. I want to see us control growth. So we have a nice place when we get through. It bothers me to see developers come in. Want to use the word rape, excuse me, and then they leave.
Do you
Yeah,
know, so from Oregon, the executive is just one vote amongst all of the council people. Is that the same here? Or does St. Paul have higher level of authority than, because his opinion is not a popular one, and I've seen him talk about this 3 times. And he gets a lot of criticism from this council, just for what that's worth.
Mhm.
I think the county council has more power over that to adopt the different growth projections and whatnot, but he can put forth a vision and then, make decisions as far as who heads departments and that. That's my understanding of it. It might not be.
It's corollary to a strong mayor form.
Strong mayor, okay.
My big takeaway from that, the reason why I wanted to share it with you, one was because it was relevant to what we talk about every month. But 2, just to point out that there are decisions that affect Birch Bay greatly, like how many people they want to see move here, and then that influences planning policies and zoning changes and everything to try to make that happen. They're being made in meetings where there's nobody from Birch Bay having a say, and in fact, it's representatives from other cities that we don't even get to vote on who have an influence on that. So that
Really appreciate you bringing this up.
yeah.
But would this meeting now be discussing this without somebody from the advisory committee knowing that that meeting was being held?
We heard about it the day before because somebody from the chamber happened upon the agenda on the county website and went, oh, this is interesting. We should tune in.
And they were formed at that point. They had not had their first meeting, but but they existed
Right.
and they were not notified.
So
And we had not invited.
Then in other words, Whatcom County Council hasn't figured out who's supposed to notify the.
Well, Holly.
So I called them and I said, where are these distribution lists? And she said, you have to go. So each of the respective cities hosted these meetings. There were 4 of them. And so I had to go back to each of the cities and say, can you please put me on the list?
Okay.
So that's what I did because I'm a late planner to the table. So
But I
you just
did
have to
hear
reach out.
somebody there suggest that they should invite us
Right.
to come and.
Our
That was-
John Scanlon, who is
At-large county council member.
right,
Yeah.
and
And so have we followed up on that, or do we intend to follow up on that?
I thanked him.
Can we ask him for the invitation? Do we need a formal?
If there's
one?
another one of those meetings.
I see.
but now Holly's on the distribution list, we think.
They're not having them anymore. That was the 4th one, as far as I know. And if I do hear of one, I'll let you know.
So invite us for the 2035.
Well, because the policies aside is a different thing. That's not our role. But I don't read too much into us not being invited to the meeting. That's probably an oversight, and I think you heard that come out with the council member saying we should be maybe invited to a future meeting. But I think what it is we cannot be complacent to Birch Bay, not we, this group, but Birch Bay needs to really be active to seek those opportunities, because it is hard to determine who should be invited to every meeting in these processes. There's so many different interests. So mistakes can happen. And I guess I would just say, grant them some grace. And we just say, please do remember us in the future. And we advocate strongly to be included in the room.
That's good.
With that, I think we can move on to the Communications Committee report.
Okay.
I'm gonna turn the heat up.
Communications. committee.
So on the back table, you guys all saw the first well done soundbite with regards to law enforcement. So the next one, we've been working on property tax values. We need to do some more discussion with that. So I think we're going to table that until we get a little further into the discussion of what research and feasibility has to present tonight. So we'll come back to that. The HOA meetings kicked off last night. We went to our first AGM. It was for the Baycrest plat, the original Baycrest plat. There's actually 3 HOAs in that group that's over 400 homes. So the first one is I can't remember now. It's on the spreadsheet, 126 homes or something like that we so we just set up in the lobby, and as they came in, we just tried to capture everybody and say, hey, have you heard about this? Here's we handed out the postcard, the copy of the law enforcement soundbite, a survey that we had made. And you know, not everybody was willing to stop and chat, but we got 6 people signed up for the emails. And as of this morning, there was more than 30 new likes on our social media and a lot of visits on both Nextdoor and Facebook and things like that. So people did go engage after. And
Excellent.
so I had asked to be on the agenda and I wasn't allowed to be placed. They were so discombobulated that I actually wasn't on the agenda, but it's an HOA where I actually own property. So they said they would have open comment at the end, but they had a deadline and I knew they weren't even going to get through all their regular business by their deadline. So but at the beginning, they had so many people show up with proxies that they had to be counting and go through if the members were all in good standing to figure out if they had a quorum.
Yeah.
So they had about 10 minutes at the beginning of the meeting, so they let me talk. So I was able to talk to the room full of people, and I would say there was at least 60, 70 people in the
Good.
room, something like that.
60 attendants.
And they asked a few questions back. There was amazing the number of people in the room who thought they were part of the city of Blaine. Who thought that, you know, the HOA was the one responsible for plowing their county roads. You know, there was some interesting things like that in the room, but anyway, all in all, it was good. Certainly some contention in there, but some people that were positive about it too, just from those aspects. So anyway, so 6 new people signed up for emails. We're getting some engagement some other way. We'll see if we start getting any emails. We had 1 survey handed back into us. We're hoping that maybe people will email their results in, but they were it was interesting watching people look down at the questions and see what was a priority for them with regards to what they're looking for services in a potential city of Birch
Not
Bay.
sure that everybody knows what the survey is.
No, only the communications committee does,
Yeah,
right?
so-
But I can actually have some here, so I can, we can
Perfect.
pass those around and.
Yes, share those.
Yeah, with the guests as well, and if everybody, this is based off of the roundtables we did last August, I guess, as our quarterly meeting, and so everybody wants to pull one of these out today. They each, as you can see on the top, it's noted for the association meeting that it was at, so we could see when the results came back, where it came from, what neighborhoods, as we go through this,
Oh,
so.
excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Monday is another one. They have not responded to be on the agenda, but I'm gonna just be out in the lobby doing the same thing and I'll just hand the packet to people as they come in. And if they want to choose to engage, they can engage or not, but at least we're getting in front of people who knew nothing about what we were doing. They had no idea we existed,
Yeah.
Really?
which, yes.
Even with all, isn't that
Yes.
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, but is one thing I want to say about that in my just mind about how Birch Bay works. It's south and it's sort of like Point Whitehorn. They don't necessarily think about being part of this Birch Bay because they hit Bay Road or Grandview and they go to Ferndale and Bellingham. They don't come this way that much.
Good point.
And so there is a difference in how people I think we're gonna see, that's my guess is that we're gonna see a difference in how people think and act and choose to vote. But anyway, so these are the events on the calendar. Nothing's changed. Northwest Parks and Rec put a bunch, all their spring and summer events, and not one of them's being held in Birch Bay. They're all in Blaine. So I think we'll, wait till there's something in Birch Bay. But again, if you have an HOA contact, let us know who that is. We'll try to get on theirs. So, the newsletter, we're collecting the information. Our goal had originally been March, but we all realized that that was pretty aggressive and in conflict with some other big publications that the Northern Light has. And so we're getting that. I think we pretty well have the content figured out. It's just going to be Charmin putting it together and making it look nice for us. So, and then the website has been launched. We're working on organizing the content and things like that, like where we can find our Zoom meetings and things. We had a request today, and
I did a
wasn't
good amount of
able to.
work last night on the
Okay.
website, so if you see any changes you want, thanks Yorkson for getting me back into it.
Yeah.
You did all the hard work.
And so, and then with the social media, I'm just doing the drop that's like the Whatcom County Communications with not allowing comments, just saying, here's a meeting notice, or here's the soundbite on law enforcement, or here's whatever, and just closing the comments so that you don't have that back and forth engagement. They can reach out or, go to the website or whatever. So, and I think that's it, other than coming back to the soundbite when we're ready for that.
Good. Yeah.
I think it's good that you've been able to contact the HOA. They're having a lot of problems right now. Jacob Planning is going through a lot.
Yes, we have somebody here who's on that,
Yeah,
so who's a member there.
just be careful.
If you would like to present, they have another meeting on the 29th at 10 a.m. I believe. I'll send you a.
Okay, that's Saturday, right? Yeah,
I'm sorry, that was for Jacobs?
I've shared these efforts with them a few times to keep them up to date, but having a non-board member speak to the group might actually be better because they're considering a large
yeah,
special assessment right now. So,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
Well, plus getting the survey of.
we haven't invested in
yeah.
about 30 years. So it's just
Yeah.
about.
Oh, there's one on the 27th, which is so between this week, we'll have all three of those Baycrest neighborhoods. And on the 27th, also just as another side meeting notice is, the Birch Bay Community Advisory Committee is on the 27th at 4 p.m.
And I
also.
think that is featuring folks from planning and development.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
it
I
is.
plan on attending that one, and
That'll be a good one to.
They brought that up at the chamber meeting.
then if you want to hang out after and meet all the people coming to the HOA meeting right after that, you're welcome to. We'll be there.
Oh, cool.
Excellent. Charmin, would you like to give the finance committee
Yeah,
report?
just a question, you guys discussed the next one of those,
Yeah,
the new one. Are you gonna talk about that tonight?
yeah, I started with that. We're gonna table that until the research and feasibility because it's gonna
Okay.
marry into their work.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you. I
we're
didn't have
not,
that.
there's gonna be some modifications and we're gonna
Oh, perfect.
pivot.
Okay.
You know, it's-
As far as finances, we've got a treasurer's report, and if you look at the income, after our last general meeting, we had delivered out our pledge cards and talked a bit about those wanting to donate as a one-time pledge or monthly pledge. I'm excited to say that, as you can see, we ended up getting a total of $1,629 donated to the BBIA.
So we met our annual.
Yes, we had the
You know?
annual goal. So, and quite a bit of this did come from the steering committee, which thank you very much. And we did the private donations too, which was really, really nice to see. Also, then we did have our normal expenses, which are constant contact, mail, starter checks. That's just something, you got some checks in, right?
We had to pay for the Department of Revenue sales tax data.
Mhm.
So I got a check made to send out. for that.
Okay, good. So that was the $654.15 for the feasibility. Had requested the Department of Revenue Public Records. And so that's what that expense was for. And then, of course, there's Zoom, so $866.12 was expenses. Good news is we still have $4,515.32 in the bank. I did go ahead and hit the submit button for the neighborly grant. So now we'll just cross our fingers and hope for May that we'll hear good news on that. And so that's where we're at.
Excellent. Any
Thank you for
questions?
submitting that.
You're welcome.
Great.
Any questions about finance? No? All right, Jonathan, would you like to give the research and feasibility committee report?
Yeah, I'll introduce and then tag team with Holly, because she did a lot of the research that we're being shared today. We had our meeting last night and we reviewed a few things. First off, we reviewed some work that Holly did
I'm just
to,
gonna set this in the middle so folks can see the parcels.
this is intended to
Please
show
speak
that.
up. Sorry to be,
Oh, yeah.
I'm just putting the parcel map in the middle.
So this shows the neighborhoods in Birch Bay that align with Holly's chart here. And so I'm gonna ask Holly to introduce her work and then I'll talk about the rest of the stuff that we did at the committee there.
Okay, so the work that I did was primarily working in GIS, pulling the parcel table data in and then applying the levy rates to each of the parcels. And so really, it's just intended to be foundational so that Jonathan can start to apply additional levies such as the road fees and things like that. So we had talked about presenting this information and then had decided not, but I think maybe you want to.
Well, I think we want to not present the data related to taxes for cities versus counties yet, because that needs some work, but this.
You want to present that?
Yeah, there's a high level of certainty that this is correct.
I did speak with the assessor's office just to confirm that I was applying the right levy rates. Presently, within the urban growth area, we have 7,532 parcels. Based on the levy rates, I'm gonna get Jonathan to actually reference the amounts because he also applied some additional calculations. But the property tax assessed is fairly substantial. Once we start to look at how much of those funds come back to proposed Birch Bay, that's the next level of discussion.
So you can see based off of what Holly did, she generated this figure $17,311,332. That is the total levy revenue that Birch Bay generates. Now, that is not the amount of revenue that's available for a city of Birch Bay to deliver services. That's for everything that the government, state, county, and otherwise schools, fire districts, generate from this area. So what we decided to do was to say, well, okay, let's look at what are the primary revenue sources that the county receives from Birch Bay for general purposes of government. And by that, I mean sheriff department, planning, administration, all those things that a city or a county must provide. And the methodology we decided to determine that is we looked at the two primary levies that county can assess for those services are the current road levy, which is a misleading name. It is not just to fund roads. It is actually all the parcels that are served by county roads. That's essentially how the county road levy works and then they have the county current expense fund. That is, if you're familiar with municipal budgets, it's the general fund. It is the dollars that go towards general purposes of government. So we took those two levy assessments and we said, okay, if we just apply those levy rates to the property values in Birch Bay, how much money does Birch Bay generate to deliver general purposes of government? And the answer is we generate about 1.87 million for the current road levy, through the current road levy, and about 1.8 million for the county current expense fund. Now, when you think of a city of Birch Bay operating, you ask yourself what resources would go to the city of Birch Bay from that levy. The county current expense fund is paid regardless.
Yeah.
That will always go to the county, even if you incorporate. Now, the county road levy, though, if you incorporate as a city, you no longer assess that levy. And through the incorporation process, set your own levy rate. That is one of the primary revenue sources that a city of Birch Bay would have to operate. It is by far not the only source of revenue, but I wanted to highlight that number because that is a number of dollars that would no longer go to the county for them to deliver the services. So if they're worried about, balancing a budget, and we incorporate, they can be sure that, you know, at least this is 2024 data, you know, about $1.87 million would no longer be available to them to do that.
It's a number we feel safe
It's-
applying.
It is an absolutely correct number. I don't have any concern about the validity of that number. So questions about this research or?
Yeah. One thing that's not included that is the fee that we pay into Birch Bay Warm, which takes care of stormwater. But technically, it's not a tax, but it's a fee based upon impervious surfaces, in other words, a building or parking lot. And Birch Bay pays into that to take care of stormwater.
It's a really good point. So what we're saying today is that is a significant number of revenue. We are not saying that that is the only revenue a city of Birch Bay would have. We're not saying that this gives you a good picture of the overall total operating revenues of a city. We're really just calling out that if you look at this from the county perspective, that's how much revenue today we're generating they would no longer receive from that source. So that's part of why we're not displaying the rest of the data we put together. Is more work needs to be done to say, what about this is meaningful to us? And what about this can we confidently say we can make some assertions about, because we don't want to give people misleading, you know, jump to a conclusion when we're not certain that the data justifies that. So this is helpful from one perspective, and I think one takeaway is it is not an insignificant amount of money that is being generated. You know, that is 8.9% of the total county road levy. So that's not a small figure. And would be reasonable for county leaders to be, you know, looking closely at what expenses would they not have if we incorporated versus what revenues they wouldn't have if we incorporated.
Yeah, tell me again about the county current expense fund, why we can't have that money too?
Because that is essentially what, you know, the county is always going to deliver services to a city of any city, a city of Birch Bay or otherwise. And so every parcel in Washington state, regardless of where you live, you pay that levy towards your local services that are delivered by the county, and the county acts on behalf of the state to do things that municipalities can't do. So there is a certain set of municipal services at the county level that a city cannot essentially take over.
Can you talk a little bit about, you know, what else you might be doing with the data or kind of where you're taking it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've done an analysis of the levy rates for every city in the state of Washington. And we are going to compared to the levy rates of their home counties, because we were trying to ask ourselves, we hear very frequently, people are concerned about taxes going up if there's an incorporation. So we're trying to say, well, does that bear out? If we look at all the cities in Washington, do they pay higher taxes than the counties around them? And I've got the data. I don't want to say any conclusions about it because I want to do some more analysis here, because there are significant outliers and factors. So think of King County. You know, the King County and Seattle both have really high levy rates comparatively to other places in Washington. Well, Seattle has its own fire department, its own police department, its own homeless services agencies, all those sorts of things that counties generally don't have. Now, King County does, but if you are in Birch Bay, you are paying a fire district levy today, and you will continue to pay a fire district levy after we incorporate. So if your city does not pay that fire district levy because you have your own fire department, it would be inappropriate for us to compare our levy rate with that city because they're bearing costs that we do not. And that's why the data we've collected is not ready for the, you know,
Not quite ready for
showtime
press
yet.
time.
Yeah, because it needs to be, yeah.
That's also true of library districts. Because some cities have their own library, like Bellingham,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and we don't, that's just fine.
Well, and then there's this principle of there are different types of levies. There are levies that are voted, and there are levies that are essentially set by councilmatically or by, you know, the state or the county that you don't vote in. So we want to make sure that we are not. because we want to answer the question, do cities tend to tax themselves at greater rates than the surrounding county? And so more work needs to be done to be able to answer that question as well.
I think to some degree, we could probably create our own levy. Right? Based on what Whatcom County is collecting, we could probably construct that. So I think that's something we could also look at doing.
Cool.
So next steps for the research committee, we are going to be doing more research on the levy rate data for cities to counties. We're also going to be analyzing the capital needs for a potential city of Birch Bay and using the county's capital planning documents and to try to answer what resources exist for a city that might not exist for a county to meet those needs. And there are small city grants specific to cities in Washington state. And so we'll be gathering some more information about sources like that we could say, well, if Birch Bay were to incorporate, we would need to satisfy this level of capital needs in the next 1 to 6 years. And we would have these resources that are unique to cities to do it in addition to what's being raised today.
So you're basically doing the feasibility study.
Yeah, really.
We're getting paid a lot less than $100,000, but
So that way we can check their work.
they're really confident they're gonna do a great job. Yeah.
Ask them the right questions.
Well, that's it. Thank you so much for all the work.
Yeah, excellent.
I knew you'd be. We can move on to open session, public comment.
Can I?
I thought we were going to discuss.
Oh, we could do that.
This maybe first before we get to.
Sure, we can do that. So we'll, having heard that and having heard the communications committee report, do we have those to pass out? Or the updated one?
Do you have any of these police ones?
The police ones are at the back, but
But we want to talk about the next one.
yeah,
Yes,
no.
we do. I just wanted to bring everybody up to date because they haven't seen the police one in this form. So there are some at the back table,
I mean, printed in color.
printed in color,
Oh,
printed at a
all right,
size
that's
that
fine.
we could hand out at meetings that are, similar to the cards that
Yeah.
we hand out.
So at a reasonable,
at
at a reasonable
price.
cost and.
Right, so they're very simple and we can produce them quickly. And the idea that we had at the start of the year was, we're gonna do one of these every month. To just bring people up to date with really simple facts. Rather than the complicated stuff that we're going through with the research. So how can we boil this stuff down? And the one that we were working on was a simple comparison of property taxes. And what we thought is, let's stay with the same format of comparing cities. And we know that there are different services that are being provided and different levies and taxes and all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to have to go with it in the same way that we know that the police departments are different. Some of them have half a policeman.
That
Trust me,
causes people a lot.
that generated a question last night.
Yeah. People can't get over
Told
the
him
fact
it was
that
a short
somebody
guy.
Good, they're looking.
Yeah,
They're
they are
reading.
looking. That's good.
And that is the key, is to get the short sound bites out on a regular basis. What we felt was, again, this sort of very simple tax thing of, this is the levy rates of comparable cities, and then get into some of the details of, well, why are they different? And slowly build people up month by month, because they're not gonna read a 20-page tome that, has all sorts of codicils and question marks and all that kind of stuff on it. So that was the issue for communications, was to boil things down simply, not to replicate or take over research material.
Because if you make it too complex, they won't read it.
Some of them won't.
Engineers will read it.
There's a fine line though between, I think, oversimplifying and not going into enough detail. So good luck.
Well, I think
So
we can
again,
get
I
the objective,
think, I think what we learned from the last quarterly meeting is you can do a simple analysis that stands, right? And actually comes up with just about exactly the same result, right? So you had a a qualification there by somebody that's been in the business for a long time that came to the same number.
Mhm.
Probably, just simple calculation rather than, running it through the Enigma machine. That's the level that we want to keep it at, and there may be some errors in that, yeah. Maybe some interpretations in that, but again, I think it's trying to keep it simple
Mhm.
so that people will pick it up and look at it rather than, oh, gee.
Gee, that's too complex.
Mhm. So the concern was, is it counterproductive? I think was what, at this stage with the other data that's coming. Cause it's the number, it's,
It's the cities you pick really matter to
Yeah.
be, are they truly comparable?
No.
To Birch Bay, and that, I think that's what we should spend some more time of saying, what cities can we pick that are apples to apples?
And so I think in the detailed stuff, that's very true, and we'll get there. What we're saying is that people recognize these cities. We can go and pick a city. I think we talked about Port Townsend as being one that's more comparable. People don't relate to Port Townsend. I had some question about Stanwood, but Lisa pointed out to me that everybody in this neck of the woods, played volleyball against them or basketball against them or football against them. So they know where Stanwood is and they have a visual picture of what that
And that's the
city
Stanley
is.
Tomato Island School District. I know that's a whole nother.
Yeah.
argument.
So we're never gonna get it right, but the ones that we had chosen before are all ones that people know because they're, with the exception of two of them, we're in Whatcom County.
Mhm.
And so I think, again, from a simplicity point of view and just trying to get some basic information out. What this one shows, which surprised me, is that most cities actually are higher tax rate than the county. The only one that's lower is Blaine. And so we were kind of surprised at that because we'd heard all sorts of rumors that cities were lower. So I went back to the 2024 levy rates and no, they were all higher except for Blaine.
And this is where it gets complex because the analysis that I've done without making firm conclusions yet, because I want to qualify that I'm not satisfied that this is a conclusion we make, is every city that has incorporated since 1970, which generally have the characteristics of being semi rural and supported by larger metropolitan cities around them. Every city that's incorporated since 1970 pays 10% less or more.
And Bob Jean supports that.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that knows.
Mhm.
What we're saying is, these are the communities that we know. And for us to say that kind of thing, if it's not supported in fact by what people are seeing on their tax bills, is going to get us, I think, into you're promoting incorporation. I would rather publish this that shows that, yes, it does cost $300 more a year, to live in Linden in a comparable home. Now, what are they getting for that $300? Well, to begin with, they're getting X number of policemen. Is that worth the $300? And I think that the Survey Monkey research indicated that a lot of people are prepared to pay more if they know what they're paying it for.
Right, yeah.
So I think, again, it's a matter of getting this ball rolling and evolving. And then, the next one can show, here are the different things that cities pay for. What do you think? Do you think that's a good thing, a bad thing? We're not setting taxes, councils set taxes, whether they're county councils or city councils.
And that's where we talked about the dollar bill broken down into the various focuses.
So it's sort of a slow rolling evolution. We're doing it actually in the detailed research. We're doing a slow rolling evolution. Wow, we never thought of that one. As Patrick pointed out, I went and looked at my tax bill and the levy rate, and it was, but there was the BB warm surcharge, and there was a second surcharge. I forget what it was. It's nickel dime stuff.
With the lighting district.
Yeah, lighting.
Yeah. So do we want to add those in? Yeah, we could. We could push this around 65 times, but to get the simple information out to people that gets them thinking about it, so they can make a realistic decision in the end of whether they want to incorporate or not feel that they've been misled, I think is really what Go back to that first slide you had on the mission statement.
Well, you want to make sure people have the whole picture too. The point I'd like to make is communications job is to disseminate information, research and feasibility. I would like to see a little more cooperation between the two groups because we did have some duplication of effort over the past month. So I would encourage you to, Jan, from communications attended the research and feasibility meeting last night. That's great. CC each other on emails, no sense duplicating efforts.
I think we can follow up and we don't need to wait 4 more weeks and just kind of work through this, because I hear your point and I understand that. And I think we could tell a fair and complete picture simply that might augment what you've put there with maybe a couple other data points. Because I think right now with that graphic, and I haven't spent more than 15 seconds looking at it, if it shows cities in Whatcom County paying more than Birch Bay, that says, yes, cities in Whatcom County have chosen to tax themselves at greater rates than Birch Bay or than the county. What I think is very important, because people ask us all the time, do my taxes inherently go up because I incorporate? I think it is important to be able to call out, because that's such a common question, is, well, in fact, no, most cities who have incorporated have chosen not to tax themselves at the same or higher rates than the county. I think that is a material.
It is
fact we
very
should know.
material. So let's make that the next one after this.
Could it be somehow incorporated?
It could,
into
it
that?
could, Jonathan, but if you keep incorporating that kind of stuff in, you don't end up with a simple bullet thing. You end up with a very complicated argument, back and forth. And I think if you sort of bring them in one at a time, it gets people following the sequence a little bit better.
Are you making an argument for presenting it at the same time, or are you making an argument for getting the data so that we have confidence in what we're putting together and distributing to everyone?
I don't know that I have a strong perspective here. I guess I would like to chat more about it, because I find what you're saying compelling, and I also want to be responsive to that question, because that was kind of the question we were originally trying to answer, is do cities pay more? So I don't know. I don't feel super jazzed about it either way. We can figure it out.
Personally, I would like to have the information, because data is so critical to any kind of argument and being persuasive and validating. So for me, having it in hand, and then, and we'll hurry as much as we can to get it.
Yeah, so the point though is this data is correct. These are the levy rates. That's what it says on the sheet. Okay, they're the simple levy rates run up for a $500,000 homes, because most people don't know what a levy rate is. But they do know, I own a home that is, worth 500,000 or 600,000, so I can do some simple math. 6 over 5 times that is, what my tax bill should be. Yeah, it is. How about that?
Let me ask this. If I was, here, I guess this is the correct way. If we were to say the first bit of data was going to go out was actually the data of incorporated cities, and we picked 6 or 7 similarly sized recently incorporated cities, and we say, see, they all pay lower taxes. And that was the first piece we went out. I think reasonably people who are not, that are incorporation skeptical might say, hey, that information is not a complete set. And you are kind of pushing a narrative that is not accurate. And I feel concerned that on the flip side, someone might say that about that information, because it tells the other side of that in a way that's not complete.
And they're going to have the same concern about how we calculated police and why did we choose these cities? Did we cherry pick them? There's always going to be those points, and the same of the information that you presented at the last quarterly. Anybody's going to take slices at it and say it's biased and everything else. And that's why it was so wonderful to have Chief Tanksley come up and say, yeah, I came up with the same number.
Why don't you present both the information concurrently? Go here our proximity comparables data set, and then here are our recent.
Perfect. So if we can get this one out for this month, before we get to the next quarter.
No, I mean at the same time.
if we can get this one out for this month, we have another month to get the other one out. And they don't really go out anywhere except to the quarterly meetings.
Well,
So-
we've been, the last one is on the front page of the website, and we're gonna figure out some way to kind of put them there and have them shuffle through.
Yeah.
Because the goal is to have a book. Is
Have a book eventually.
Yeah.
have them all
I'll
there.
take it, yeah. I'll
But
take it from the
it's a,
Okay, cool.
yeah, okay,
Thanks, yours.
I think that the validity of comparing similar cities is extremely compelling versus just our neighbors. So I do see that. I know we started with this and say, what is our neighbors? But I think the idea that we would potentially look at both and then, but with the statement, and I know where you were going originally, it's like showing that we're not partisan. Look, we're saying this was, the point was some cities are paying more, they've chosen to pay more. And that helps say, we're not, trying to pull the rug out from under you here by,
Or unbiased.
but being, and to be unbiased, but I think we do need to think about how it serves the work we're doing also, right? With,
I'm looking for the credibility factor, and we can pull as many questions about comparisons of quote newly incorporated cities because they're 20 years old. So it's still a valid point, but is it valid? I mean, we have a study being redone because it's 20 years old. I mean, everybody's going to be able to be questioning anything. And we just have to be, I think, honest about it and try and give people as many comparisons as they can, and they can pick and choose what they want to believe or not.
Okay, I like the place. I like it a lot, and we went over it, all those numbers in the feasibility in our incorporation meeting. I'm very comfortable with that. I'm not as comfortable with those numbers yet. So as, I think, Jonathan brought up a couple of times that different cities carve out or have other things in there and they're not comparable. And I'm not sure if there's anything in there that would not make it comparable.
I don't know. I haven't done
Yeah, this
any
is
analysis of.
just some of the data.
It's
that we
7:00 and I want to make sure we reserve at least a third of the meeting for public comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to take, Patricia had a question back here, and then I'd encourage somebody to make a motion.
The Birch Bay is the only unincorporated one that you have numbers here for. Did anybody look at all of the unincorporated area of the county and determine how many officers they got?
Columbia, I don't know who else.
Columbia.
They would all
Oh.
fall into the, so many handful of officers on at any given time that are kind of patrolling the whole 933 square miles of unincorporated Whatcom
Yeah.
County,
And
excluding
it's
the mountains.
by sector,
Yeah.
and there's typically four on
Four
duty per
sectors.
sector, however, they're not, isn't
We
always.
get one neighborhood deputy 4 days a week.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Does
but
any
this is
other
what it's
BBIA
obvious to me
get
that we
one
don't have
deputy?
as many
Not that I know.
deputies.
So
Most places have, but I guess I just wondered if, are there other deputies that are in unincorporated areas?
Yeah, yeah.
Tanksley shared that at the quarter,
Okay.
at the meeting as well.
And Matt, on the email for this meeting notice
Mhm.
is a link to watch on YouTube to
Okay.
rewatch that portion of the meeting. Well, the whole meeting's there, but you can rewatch Jonathan's presentation and Sheriff Tanksley's
Okay. Thank you.
question and answer too, which he goes over some of that.
Well, should we continue at a later date?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Okay, can I have one question? I don't know
Yeah,
where this
sure.
goes in, but, in the feasibility study from the consultants, they are not having a community meeting.
I don't have one in front of me because I handed it
They're
out.
having a virtual public meeting.
There's a virtual public meeting,
And I'm not sure
upfront.
that,
virtual project kickoff meeting. And then if you go towards the end here,
it says one scheduled community-wide events such as National Night Out, the Kite Festival. Yeah, I'm not sure what they're gonna get out of that, but.
And then another virtual public meeting. I
Same
mean,
thing we do.
we
And an online survey.
we had kind of been, hoping the timing would work, that we would be able to focus on it at our, say, our August quarterly associate, community meeting or our November annual general meeting. We could invite, you know, folks who helped out on it then, but they might not be hosting a local deal. It might be a remote, you know, Zoom kind of thing.
That's too bad.
Yeah, there is engagement with our group here, which is nice. We'll be able to share what we found, see some of their data. Good. All right, I want to make sure people have the opportunity to ask questions or make any sort of statement they want. Just a reminder, please state your name for the record. In the interest of keeping meetings to a reasonable length, each speaker is allotted 3 minutes. We'll give you a little extra time if you really want it or need it, but please let us know. Some folks like to stand up and ask questions. You're welcome to do that. Just make it clear that you're asking a question. If you just want to make a statement, we're not going to respond and debate you. You know what I mean?
We'll see you in the parking lot.
So if there's anybody here, you know, please raise your hand, and then the folks online can raise a hand there if they'd like to chime in as well. We will be able to hear you online. Anybody here that'd like to make a public comment during open session here, ask any questions? We do want to hear from you.
I was waiting for somebody back here. I was just stand up here. Maybe. I mentioned, when we met last night, that I was thinking about the day I quit smoking.
Talk louder, Patrick.
And it had nothing to do with health. Patricia, we started raising kids. I couldn't afford to smoke anymore, so I quit. Now, what does that have to do with being a city? You spend what you have and what you need. Now, you've seen this before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And said, no, Pat, don't send this out. I'm sending it out now.
Airmail. Used to cost more.
Wait a while to talk more yet.
I'm sure everybody gets one.
There you go. And this is my brooch. There you go. And it says here, this publication, October 24th, 2024, because this is the last version of this. I had it with a circle around it, which just said that so you can see it. Just a red line up here. The dividing line between Blaine and Birch Bay that the boundary review board decided upon. Right now, Blaine is moving down through that. Down at the bottom, it says, why registration committee city to protect what we have. And you can scan this with QR code. It'll take you to where we're living. And why I want to see it protected. Oh, first page. Can we afford it? Well, I've given a description of us, what we're doing. And how to do it. My deal is, can we afford not to? Seth Paul said, we screwed up Birch Bay enough, let's go build a Custer. Well, I think he meant that, yes. But it's true, they've screwed up Birch Bay. Birch Bay is a growing area, we have a good supply of high quality water. We have well-established water sewer district. Birch Bay is a very pleasant area to live in. It needs protection from developers who move in and work to keep their development costs low, leaving residents stuck with dealing with the negative impacts of development. And I could go through a lot of them with these. You may have your reasons for Birch Bay being a city. This is mine.
You need your name on it.
It does.
Yeah.
Thanks, great.
It is on Birch Bay.
Oh,
Said,
Yeah.
your yes vote. Your yes to bringing government closer to us, so we have more control over such things as taxes. How much taxes are we in for, what they're used for. Urban growth, having more desirable additions to reducing the negative impacts of growth. And then they said, oh, we can't grow, we have valuable farmland. Let them go to Birch Bay. I got my business card here. It says here, Key's Place, 1888. The Key family settled that corner of Birch Bay. They built a barn. Farming was lousy. So what they did, they turned it into a dance hall. Oh, yes. And they produced tokens to produce the business. Okay, public safety, reducing speeding and reckless driving in our roads and increasing pedestrian and bicycle safety. So on the back, not quite perfect, I break down property taxes per person. I don't like the idea of cracking it down for $500,000 house. So I was showing Birch Bay and how it compares with other areas in the air region. Cities in Washington. In order by size of population. I show about where we are with the. Down the bottom, there's a little illustration thing showing it. Where Birch Bay would be, right here. As compared with the smallest city. So generally comparing taxes. Bellingham. Right here. Taxes per capita. $1,698.09. Out in the rural areas, where people take care of themselves. Where since life is simple and they're closer to nature. $1,992.68 is higher. Also. People living in the areas are spread out. Bellingham's more highly quality services in rural areas, for example, better policing, better fire protection, and EMS services. Generally, cities offer better services at reasonable cost than rural areas. The higher level services also lead to lower insurance costs on homes and even automobiles. Even the cost of electricity and internet is lower in Bellingham than in the rural areas of Whatcom County.
Patrick, why wouldn't you work with research and feasibility and communications on this? Because some of the information is in conflict with what
I know.
These groups are putting.
I showed this a long time ago. And I'm saying I'm solely responsible for this.
So you're not distributing this now?
I'm going to.
Well, can you let us work with you and we'll update it? I think
correct
there's-
the numbers.
Yeah, there's validity to this certainly, but your numbers are off, so let's get them updated.
We don't want to muddy the water with.
See, this is what I had last time.
No, meaning they want to just work with you and you can print it, but print it with the right numbers.
And we'll get some help with the graphics. I mean, I think there's value here.
I know there's value there.
Right. No, I'm not, authorizing it. I'm just saying it's great. So let us get you the right numbers.
You don't have to authorize it.
I'm speaking Canadian. I think it's great.
Well, and you know how we feel.
I'm just saying, we'll probably get the right numbers.
I think as a member of the committee, we have to be responsible to the group
Well,
and to
should I
having,
resign myself from the committee?
no, I don't think you should.
Patrick, all we're saying is, don't change a thing, just a few numbers to make them accurate,
Fine. Well, they're not bad numbers.
but they're not accurate.
How do you know?
Where did the Washington cities, where did you get the population number
Can't
for
use
Birch Bay?
population with property. taxes.
Well, there was a number I got, I think from you at the time, but that number we can change, whatever that
Yeah,
number is.
yeah, that's all I want to do.
You
is
can go
change some of the
online and
numbers.
pull up
Give
the
me another
population
number.
city and it gives you a
Perfect.
chart and it doesn't match the UGA. And it's not this number either, because I just looked at it last
Well, the
week,
map
but
doesn't really map because it's an older map,
yeah.
Right.
but it's close.
Close, hand grenades and horseshoes,
What?
is that right?
My concern is, we have a statement of purpose we're trying to stick to, and it's tough sometimes to not be an advocate or advocate against it or whatever, but we're supposed to not be maybe making some of these statements at this point until we have the. Well, I mean, we can't stop you from printing and distributing whatever you want because we have free speech in this country, but it may not be helpful to the overall mission of the group if individual members are coming to their own conclusions and publicizing them. And I'm trying to be sensitive, this is good, but you should work with the committee on it.
If you wanna write down numbers for me and send it to me, you can.
Okay.
My email address is down there.
Yeah,
Good. We have,
But the basic statement, this is where I am.
I'm glad you're a part of this group too, because you're the only, well, you were involved too for quite some time
Yes.
too, but the last time this was put to a vote was 1992. And you two are linked to that and help keep us on track with the context and provide a lot of good historical information and all that. So, I value your.
That's nice.
Your.
We should went home.
What was that?
it's like Santa Claus.
Okay.
My
These are
good.
all the cities in Washington State. Down here in Seattle. Rolling all the way out the end. See that yellow spot right down there? It's about where Birch Bay is.
Somebody stayed up late last night.
I love this visual.
Oh, here,
This is awesome.
Yeah,
the Post-it note?
yeah, that's about it.
And so the
Maybe
computer,
up or down a little
so the
bit.
computer came up with the idea that that's where Birch Bay was, or how did you figure
No,
out?
I
This
did.
is off the
Just
state
numbers.
website, population, but I think it's the Birch Bay, census designated place probably.
I want to make sure we leave time
Yes.
for other people to speak.
Oh, yeah, I prefer other people speaking. I like to listen to them.
We'll follow up and get you numbers at all.
Well, just email me.
Yeah, we will.
I love this. This is great.
Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment, ask questions?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Doug, please introduce yourself and.
Hi, yeah, it's Chuck Kinzer. Just a couple of things. First, I was trying to get to the research and feasibility committee meeting yesterday and I couldn't make it, so I'm sure that she's had a lot of positive, but I want to say congratulations again to Holly, because I thought the stuff you did was great.
It's fantastic. The amount of work is amazing. Yeah.
So, a couple of things. One is, would it be possible to find the percentage of increases in property taxes or taxes between counties and cities? That is, if the city raises over the last 5 years, say, if the
Like
city's taxes
the
go
growth
up
rate?
5% a year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And the county tax rate goes up, 8% a year, that would be an interesting statistic.
it's easy to do.
so
Go on the website.
I want to understand this question. So what are we trying to answer with that? Because if I look at levy rates, I have a chart of all the levy rates in counties in every city that goes back, I think, 20 years.
Yeah.
I did not put that,
Yes.
and the MRS put that together. I downloaded it, so I did not compile that, but one of the
You two
things
know how to party, I
that-
tell you.
that stood out to me of that data set was the incredible variance between levy rates in a given municipal boundary year to year. It didn't show, it was like, what's the word? It had kind of like a stochastic pattern to it that I think was related to policies that the assessor might have had, and it was related to annexation and growth. So if you had a big development or you annexed a piece of new land, you would see that your levy rate would drop. So Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm going on, but what are we answering with that? Because we can do it.
Well, I know in a number of the meetings that we've had in the past, the general meetings and quarterly meetings, people are always concerned or have been concerned about whether or not their taxes would go up. And my response has always been, they go up anyway, right?
Yeah.
And then the next follow-up question is typically, well, won't they go up more if we're a city than if we stayed a county? And so I was wondering if there was a way to, get that data out there somehow in a simplified way.
I think we can do that. If we just show the trend lines over a
Right,
20-year period.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. That we can do that.
Yeah, I
That'd be
mean,
really
that might be better than just comparing levy rates, for example, because levy rates are so dependent on what budget you're trying to meet, right? I mean, if you have a $17 million budget, you may need a certain levy rate to get that,
Right.
as opposed to something else. So I don't know. So that was one comment. The other one was this survey, which I like and I don't like. It's because I worry a little bit. I mean, I guess it depends how it's presented and what people think about it, because you don't want people to go away thinking that if we become a city, we can have these things. Because they don't depend on becoming a city, they depend on what the city council or whatever governance structure you have decides whether or not that happens, and that might happen based on a vote or a referendum within the city. So, whether or not you have local restaurants doesn't depend on having a city. Right, whereas zoning decisions, they could depend on having a city, right? Local control. So a lot of these things don't really, matter until there is a city, and then the city council will decide whether these things work or whether they happen. It's really great to have the data, to say, we want more policing, or we want, I don't know, pick one, we want local traffic and parking enforcement. But that all comes later in a way. So it's kind of the way it's presented. If it's presented as, let's see what's important to the community. Understanding that you may not get these because it depends on actions after we incorporate. But some of these are critical to incorporation, like zoning control. Right, so I don't know, splitting them up somehow might be good. I don't know.
It could, I mean, these came off of the
Yeah.
roundtable ones from last year, and I think one of the things we said at that meeting was it gets people thinking about what services
Right.
come with being a city, and then also just gauging what's important to people.
Right.
And while I can see what you're saying about the things like restaurants or grocery stores or whatever, but those are important to people that live here, and we are more likely to get them if we're incorporated and there is somebody who's going after commercial development and economic development, like the port, that doesn't help us.
What if we had headings with, local control, commercial development, things like that, those tag words start to line up for people.
I think we'll be lucky if we get 10 of them back,
If I
though.
could, the whole idea of this was not to get into a big statistical debate and to figure out the variances and the accuracies and everything else. It was to get a feeling of how people in different parts of Birch Bay might perceive things. And the real effort came from hearing different things from different HOAs, for example, which kind of struck me. The HOA that I live in, we pay for our own roads. We pay for the maintenance of our own roads. We pay for building our own roads. Other HOAs may not pay for the roads, they're county roads, but I found out last night, they pay for their street lighting. Go figure. So how many times do we want to parse this? We're just trying to get a feel for what is important to people that might lead us to say, we need to do a little bit more detailed research into it. This in itself is not a research project.
Michael, isn't there an education component to this, though? That we're not only finding out what their opinions are, but we're talking about what incorporating might do. And so they start to see it in a different perspective. So it's subtle, I know, but I think that there's something there. If we start to talk about local control, things like that, just food for thought.
anyway, it's not a debate. I'm not after statistics. It's just a comment. The other comment that I had was, some of the things that have been put out recently are wonderful. I mean, I really like them. And you can start looking across them, which I guess the committee will do anyway. But the $17+ million property taxes, if you take a look at the thing, I think Matt or whoever sent it out on policing and how much of the general fund budgets are, done. So the average was like, I think it was 38% of those general budgets over the average over those cities were actually used to fund the police in those, cities. And if you take $17 million and you do like 30%, because some of those budgets had other things in them. So if you take 30%, you're still talking about around $5 million, a little bit more than 5 million, let's say 5 million. And so if you look back at those numbers on that chart, that's in line with what the cities are paying. So you can almost, I mean, I wouldn't publicize that, but just here, you could say, well, if that's what happens, we have 17 million, we need 30% for police, and that's around $5 million. We could fund the police, the way that the sheriff was talking about it. Understanding that whole 17 million isn't gonna come back to us, but that's true of the numbers that were on that other chart too. All that general fund money wasn't coming back to them either. So, I think that's a real positive. I mean, knowing that we can actually fund that police force, would be great. So anyway, just comments.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, or, I maybe if you want to prompt something that we could be researching and reporting on. I'm trying to get.
Well, I know, but I think what research and feasibility has lined out for the work between now and the May meeting and the guests that are there is plenty of work to do, so.
Good. Well,
Okay.
there's,
Move to adjourn.
I was gonna ask. Is there a second? All right, you get her. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks to the folks who came online.
Stuff. Go home and.
Go to.
That's true. Every.
We are.
committee I've always during this meeting.
Yeah, it's all good.
Look at me.
Before people walking last.